I will tell you a story, and you must listen carefully, for these things do not happen often. And when they do, people pretend to forget. But I remember. It happened many years ago in our village, Nyanda, when I was still a young man. It was the season of great rains, when the river swelled and the frogs sang through the night. That was when Ajoro, the drummer, took a wife. Her name was Nyanda, and she was beautiful like the first light of dawn. Ajoro was no ordinary man. When he played the drums, the spirits of the land listened. During festivals, his rhythms made the elders nod and the children dance until their feet were sore. It was said that even the ancestors heard his music and sent blessings through the wind. So, when his wife became pregnant, the village rejoiced. Ajoro's child will be a great drummer, the people said. Perhaps even greater than his father. But there was something strange about Nyanda's pregnancy. The women in the village noticed first. When a woman carries a child, her belly moves as a kicking, turning, shifting like a restless river. But Nyanda's belly was still. Heavy. Silent. The old midwife, Mama Chisimo, placed her ear against Nyanda's stomach many times, listening. She would sit back with a troubled face but say nothing. "The child is just different," Nyanda would insist, rubbing her belly. But we all felt that something was not right. Then, on the night of the great storm, the child was born. Lightning tore across the sky, and the wind howled like a grieving mother. The hut where Nyanda labored was packed with Womena grandmothers, mothers, sisters all ready to welcome the child. The men sat outside, waiting to hear the first cry of a newborn. But no cry came. Instead, when Mama Chisimo pulled the child from Nyanda's womb, the women gasped in horror. It was no ordinary baby. No soft skin, no small fingers grasping for a mother's touch. Instead, wrapped in Nyanda's afterbirth, was a small drum. Yes. A drum. Its surface was smooth, dark as the night sky, and its edges were wrapped in strips of cloth, as if prepared by unseen hands. The women wailed. Some ran from the hut, clutching their chests. The midwife, her hands trembling, placed the drum on the floor and backed away. Ajoro, hearing the commotion, rushed inside. His wife lay still, too weak to move, her eyes wide with shock. He saw the drum and stepped closer, his breath heavy. Then, without warning, the drum played itself. A single drum echoed through the hut, though no one had touched it. Outside, the wind stopped. The rain, which had poured like an endless river, ceased at once. The fire, which had been struggling against the storm, burned taller and stronger. No one spoke. Ajoro, his hands shaking, bent down and lifted the drum. He turned it in his hands, examining it as if it were a living thing. Then, in a voice that was barely a whisper, he said, "He is my son." At first, the village did not know what to do. Some said the drum was a gift from the gods. Others claimed it was a curse. "No woman gives birth to a drum," the elders murmured. "It is an abomination." But Ajoro refused to listen. He carried the drum everywhere, speaking to it in low tones, just as a father would speak to a newborn. And the strangest thing? The drum seemed to listen. It never played when touched. No matter how hard Ajoro struck it, it remained silent. But at night, when the village was asleep, the drum would play on its own. Softly at first, a gentle rhythms, like a lullaby. Then, after a few weeks, something terrifying happened. The village's oldest man, Babakunda, died suddenly in his sleep. He had been strong just the day before, chewing bitter cola and laughing with the young men. But in the middle of the night, his breath stopped. That same night, the drum had played a slow, mournful beat. Did you hear it? The villagers whispered. The drum played, and Babakunda died. They watched Ajoro closely after that. And it happened again. A few weeks later, another rhythm filled the air, this time fast, sharp beats that made the dogs whimper and the birds flee from the trees. The next morning, a young woman, barely 20, was found lifeless in her hut, her face frozen in surprise. The whispers grew. The drum calls the dead, the people said. It does not bring life, it takes it. Fear spread like fire through dry grass. People avoided Ajoro, crossing the road when they saw him. Mothers whispered charms over their children when he passed. But still, Ajoro refused to let go of the drum. Until the night his wife died. She had grown weaker over the months, her body thinner, her voice softer. She had stopped eating, stopped speaking. It was as if something unseen was draining the life from her. That night, when the drum played, Ajoro did not sleep. He sat by the fire, watching the moon. When the rhythm changed to slow, sorrowful beats, he knew. He ran into the hut, but it was too late. Nyanda was gone. A terrible cry ripped from Ajoro's throat. A sound so broken, so raw, that even the spirits must have turned their heads. And then, in the silence that followed, the drum did something it had never done before. It split. Right down the middle. The next morning, the villagers found Ajoro at the river bank, staring at the two halves of the drum. He did not speak. He did not weep. Then, without a word, he stood, lifted the broken pieces, and walked deep into the forest. No one followed. No one saw him again. To this day, when the wind blows through the trees at night, we sometimes hear a distant drumming. Soft, steady beats that travel through the darkness. Some say it is the wind. Others say it is Ajoro, still carrying his son through the land, searching for a place where the rhythm of death cannot reach. I do not know which is true. But when I hear the drumming, I do not sleep. For the drum is silent no more.